So RTOS, supervisory mode. So we'll be studying about user and supervisory mode. Coming to user and supervisory mode, the OS needs higher privileges than user. So in this OS routine run in supervisory mode, there is one method. The second one is ordinary program run in user mode. So when it comes to supervisory mode, an execution privilege instruction can be carried out. It will be able to perform some I/O operations. It can perform some I/O operations. In a supervisory mode, it can perform some I/O operations. So those I/O operations are controlled by some interrupts. So if I take a system or a processor, so we are taking some inputs from other devices. So if we take the input from the other devices, so it is able to perform some I/O operations. These I/O operations can be an interrupt, to enable an interrupt, to disable an interrupt, or to return the interrupt from the main program. And it can also be in the instructions to change process modes. So processor modes can also be changed. Can be changed. So this mode can access privileged address space like address data structures inside the OS. Accessing other process address space and change and create address space is also possible. So what is supervisory mode? In a supervisory mode, we can perform some I/O operations. So along with I/O operations, we can also hand over some interrupt. So interrupt operations. So these interrupts can be enabled, disabled, as well as returned. And we can also have instructions to change over processor modes. So when the processor is changing from one mode to another mode, we can access to it and we can change the instruction set of the particular mode. So this mode can access privileged address. So it can access the privileged address, like accessing to an instruction or a OS. So other than this, it can also address to some address space, where it can create a address space for the program to run. So this is about supervisory mode. So when it comes to a normal user mode, in this mode all the instructions are running in normal mode. All the instructions are running in normal mode. For example, it can be like load and store general registers. Load and store general registers. So where it can be load and store the registers, it can load from memory to registers or from registers to memory. This can be done. It also uses arithmetical logic test and compare and data copying instructions, and as well as branch and subroutine. It can also use arithmetic, logical, compare, data copying instructions, branch instructions, and subroutine calls can be carried out by using this user mode. It can also be able to address some subroutines of memory, and not able to perform some privileged operations. So apart from privileged operations, it can do other memory accessing information. Apart from privileged operations, it can do all other operations like arithmetic, logical, comparison, data copying, branch, then also subroutine calls in the user mode. So that is called user mode, a general user mode. But there is a lot of difference between a user mode and supervisory mode. Okay, so we know that in supervisory mode, the I/O operations, interrupts, instructions can change the processor modes. This mode can be accessed only in the privileged address space. like accessing data structures inside the OS. It should be inside the OS space. So this is called privileged or supervisory modes. Okay. Okay. Let's start with the next one. So next is kernel. So kernel is a core of the operating system and is responsible for managing various resources of the system. So what is kernel? What it does? So kernel, when I speak about kernel, kernel is the core of an operating system and it is responsible for various resources of the systems. Various resources of the system. It also provides communication among the hardware, software. So what it does? So kernel is a core of an operating system and is responsible for managing various resources of the system. And it also provides communication among the hardware and the software. So that is about your kernel. What is a kernel? Okay. And it is also seen that kernel job to keep each process and user separate. You can see the user mode and kernel mode should be always separate to a regular access to the system hardware, including your CPU, including your memory, including your disk and other I/O devices. So what kernel will do? Kernel job is to keep each process and user separate. Okay, to keep each process and user separate and to regulate access to the system hardware. System hardware which includes CPU, memory, disk and other I/O devices. Okay, let us see the block diagram here. As we see here, kernel is the smallest and center component. If you observe here, it is a smallest and central component of an operating system. What it does, it serves including managing memory. Main thing is memory and devices. And also it provides the interface for the software applications. That is their software applications to the resources and the user. So that is the function of your kernel space or kernel. Okay, that is about your kernel. Next, coming to this block, we'll study a few things about each block and which are responsible, how it will work. Okay, as we can see here in this, we have process scheduler, I/O process communication, network management, I/O output management, file system management, memory management. When it comes to process management, it refers to a program in execution. So whenever I speak about a process, it is nothing but a process which is referred to a program, which is referred to a program which is executing or which is going to execute. Okay, the operating system responds by creating a process. So how a process is created? The process is created by the operating system, which is responding to the process management. A process needs certain resources. Every process, when it comes to picture, it needs a resource. What is that resource? Resource is nothing but the memory. So not only memory, we also speak about CPU, files, and I/O devices. So when it comes to a program that is controlled by your operating system, a process needs certain resources. The resources is nothing but a memory, a CPU, file and I/O devices. Okay, these resources are certain given to the processor. These resources are either given to the processor. So when it will be given to the processor? When it is created or allocated to it while it is running. When a program or a process is started running, the resources will be allocated to it. So when the resources will be returned back? When the process terminates. When the process terminates. When the process terminates, memory is released. Memory is released. Why the memory is released? Because we need to reuse the memory. Reuse the memory. Okay. That's called reusable resources. Okay. The term processor refer to an executing a set of machine instructions. Whenever I speak about a program, it is nothing but a set of instructions which are running. A program by itself is not a process. A program is a passive entity. We call it as a program as a passive entity. Okay. So process management we'll see a few more steps on process management. So few of these steps to be performed by a process management. The first step, what it does is the user and system process are created and deleted by the operating system. The user and system process are created and deleted by the process. The user process and the system process are created by the operating system. That is first point. What it does, what process management will do, it will create a user process and system process created by the OS. And it also can create or it can also delete a particular process by the operating system. Second one, it will support deadlock. It supports a deadlock. So deadlock handling is also available in the operating system. What is deadlock? When I say I am calling a main program, this main program is calling a subprogram. If this subprogram after execution is not returning back to the main program within a particular time period, if it is not returning back to the main program, then your deadlock occurs in your main program. That means your system, your subprogram is running by itself and it is not returned back to the main program. So if this occurs, then your subprogram will be in deadlock, or you can call it as the main program is in deadlock. You will not return back to the main program. So it's called deadlock. So these are all carried out by your operating system. It checks for a particular time. If that time is timeout, then it will release the deadlock. So that is one advantage of your process management. So the third point, what is the third point here? It allocates hardware resources among the process. It will allocate hardware resources to the process. That's the third point. Third point, what it does, it provides hardware resources to the process. That's third point. So we know that the second part is it allocates 1 minute. What it does, it supports deadlock handling. The last point is it creates system process. Creates system process, and it can also delete a system process. That's the first point. Second point is it's about deadlock handling. Third one is It supports hardware resource among the process. The fourth point, it provides mechanism. What it does, it provides a mechanism for process communication. It provides what? It provides a mechanism for process communication. It supports a mechanism for process communication. That's the fourth point. So last point, what else it can do? Process, what it do? Process progress is also controlled. What is that? Process progress. Process progress is also controlled by the system. So these are the 5 points you need to remember for a process management. Which are the activities being carried out by the operating system for the process management. Okay. Next, we will see the memory management. So coming to memory management, a memory management module, as you can see here, memory management module. What it does, it is mainly concerned with your primary memory. It is mainly concerned with primary memory. So memory management performs some functions. There are a lot of functions which are carried out by your memory management. It is only applicable for your primary memory. So what we will see what it does. The first point is it maintains what it does. It maintains the status of each location of a main memory. Each location of main memory. If I take this as a main memory, it will maintain each location memory status. Whether that memory is used or whether that memory block is unused. So unused. So one is used and one is unused. Second. So it also determines allocation of policies for the memories. It will allocate a policy for memory. So what it does, it determines or allocates a policies for memory. So there should be a policy. So which are the external device or internal device has to be accessed. Okay, that is the second point. The third one, it supports allocation techniques. So when I am speaking about a memory, I want to allocate some of the data or some inputs from an external device. So that allocation technique is also supported by your memory management. So where to allocate, which is allocated and which is remaining is controlled by this. Okay. Next is it performs some deallocation techniques and policies. So as soon as allocation is done, there should be a deallocation technique policy, we call it as deallocation technique policy. So when to allocate, when to deallocate, the policy has to be taken care. That has to be carried out. That is called deallocation policy of a memory management unit. Okay, next, memory management is we see it is a primary concern with allocation of physical memory. So I am speaking about physical memory. Okay, when it comes to physical memory, it is has a finite capacity. It's a finite capacity resulting for a process So when it takes the overall resource utilization and other performance, when you take the overall resource utilization and other performance criteria of a computer system that are not affected by this performance because it is carried out by your finite capacity request by the process. So that is one advantage. And we have seen many memory management schemes are available, and the effectiveness of different algorithms also depends on the particular situations. What memory you are accessing, where you are accessing, it also depends upon that. And we can see a user program are loaded onto consecutive memory locations by using base and limit registers. So whenever I want to store some data, this should be a base and this should be a limiter register which specifies where to start, where to end. So these are used while addressing to the physical address of a memory, or used while addressing a physical address of a memory. Okay, then user can load a process with only one absolute address. When you see, a user can load only one absolute address for an instruction and data. That is one main advantage here, where your specific address are free. Whereas specific address are free in main memory. So there are specific address which will remain free in the main memory. And your program instruction data and other data, if you observe, these are called structured and which are requested by the process and can be accessed easily by the address and relative address. So there is one advantage. Okay. Apart from this, there is one more main advantage. It supports dynamic reallocation, which is requested by the external hardware. Dynamic reallocation, we call it as. So when I speak about this internal memory, when I speak about this as the external memory, I want to transfer the data from external memory to internal memory. Then I speak about dynamic reallocation technique method. It is nothing but it is a mapping of virtual address space to the physical address, virtual to physical address space on a runtime basis. Okay, so dynamic reallocation makes it possible to move a particular execution program or a process from one area to main program or main program to another without affecting the particular process. So that is your dynamic reallocation that you have seen in memory management. Okay, so that is about your memory management. Next is device management. Device management is also comes under your memory management. So when I speak about a device management, it is nothing but a storage device in a mechanism. It's a mechanism which will be like a computer which can store information, which can store some information. Device, or you can call it as a memory, which is a memory mechanism in a computer, which can store the information in a particular pattern. Okay, so that the user can retrieve the data very easily in the same pattern. So in the same way, we can speak about a secondary storage memory devices, which are used for storing all the data and programs. What it does, it will store both data and program. This is secondary storage memory. So these programs and data accessing by computer system must be kept in a main memory. These things which are going to access, they should be kept in a main memory unit. Okay, so let us see the size. The size of the main memory is small to accommodate all data and programs. What it does, the size of the memory is small so that it can accommodate all the data and programs. It also includes some of the lost data, or maybe include some of the data which has to be accessed later. And for this reason, secondary storage devices are used, where I want to store some few data which are not being used right now, but will be used later, that are stored in secondary storage devices. Later I can access those data. So these things are properly managed by the disk storage in the central storage device, done by central storage device, which controls this secondary storage devices. This is one point. Next is the operating system will be responsible for most of the following activities. We will see that there are some 3 points. We'll see that. So first point in this, free space management. Second one will be storage allocation. The third one will be disk scheduling. Which are those? Disk management will be taking care of few things. Free space management, storage allocation, disk scheduling. Free space management will take care how much memory is utilized and how much memory is available. Storage allocation will take care where the data is stored in a consecutive memory locations. And disk scheduling will take care which memory space has to be used by the which process while running in a CPU. So these are the 3 points which will carried out by the disk management unit. So the entire speed and performance of the computer may depend upon the speed of the disk system. That is nothing but your hard disk. So that is about your device management. Okay. Next is file management. So when it comes to file management, it is logically related to data on the secondary storage. So when I speak about file management, it is a secondary data which are stored in a logically stored, It is called as in the name of files. The files has logical collections of information. This is called logical collection of information. What files will hold? It holds the logical collection of information. Okay. So how your computer will be used? Computer uses this physical media for storing the different information. The storing information can be video, it can be data, it can be MP3 files, audio files, or something like that. A file may contain a report, an executable program. We can say a file can have a report or it can have an executable program. The executable program is nothing but .exe files. This can be there. It can also have a set of commands to the operating systems. For the operating systems. And we can also say a file consists of a sequence of bits. It can have a sequence of bits. It can also have a sequence of bytes, lines, records, like go on. It can store the data. So for storing the files on a physical media in essence secondary storage device. It's nothing but your physical media. So for storing the files in a physical media, the secondary storage is used. So these physical media are of different types. There are many types. Which are those? It can be of magnetic disk, it can be of magnetic tape, and it can be of optical disk. It can be of magnetical disk, magnetical tape, or it can be of optical disk. So all this media has its own characteristics. And physical organization. So each media is controlled by a device. So we will see some operating system performance followed by some activities. How your connection with the file management. We will see that. So first one, what it does is it creates and deletes a file. So how a file is created and how a file is deleted. So first it can create, it can also delete a particular file. So then what else it can do? It can map the files onto the secondary storage. It can map to a secondary storage device. And it can also do one more. It can create and delete a directory. This is about your file management system. And it can also do few more things. Take backup. If you want to take a backup of a particular memory, you can take backup of M files or N files. N number of files you can take a backup. So it can be stored onto a external media. This can also be done by the file management. And lastly, it can also support some primitive on manipulating files in a directory. If I want to manipulate a particular directory, if I want to change something in a file directory, I can change it. So where your directory holds the files, this can also be done by using this file management unit. And we can also have transmission of files. We can do a transmission of files between main program and secondary storage, or I can call it as a main memory to secondary storage. We can also do that. So these are the 6 points you need to remember while speaking about file management. So file management subsystem can also be implemented as one or more layers of an operating system. It can have many layers. It can have 1 or 2 layers. So this user can access to these files by using some of the system calls. Which files I need to access, which directory I need to access. So how to access it, this can be done by using open or close of a file. So whenever it opens an existing file, whenever I'm going to open an existing file or creating a new file or open a existing file, so these are called by the open functions by the kernel. These are called open by the kernel. Kernel resolves the path from where it is being opened, from where it is going to access. This is controlled by your kernel of your file system by the file management. Okay, this is about your file management. Okay, next we'll start with IO system management. Okay, coming to your IO system management, the most of your module keeps have a track of status of the device. What status? So what type of IO have been connected to which device it is going to access. Is kept on controlled. What is controlled here? Traffic is controlled from IO to some particular file. So each IO device has a device handler. It has a device handler which will take care of this data from input IO device to a memory access residing in a separate process. In a separate device we can call it as, from one device to one more device we can call it as. So how your high subsystem will work, how your IO subsystem will work, we will see. In that first one, a memory management component that includes buffering, caching and spooling. What do we call as memory management? A memory management unit which will take care of buffering and which can also take care of caching and which can also take care of spooling. These are the 3 things to remember. So when you speak about memory management, you need to speak about buffering, you need to speak about caching, and we also speak about spooling. So these are the memory management components when we are transferring the data from IO device to internal memory or external memory. That's one point. Second point is a general device driver interface is important. So who is taking care of this? Again, it comes to kernel. So what it does, it will take care of your device driver. So what a device driver will do, it will take care of which device has to be accessed and where to access and where and how to store the data. So that is the second point. Okay, third point, drivers for specific hardware device important. Drivers for specific hardware device is important. Drivers for specific hardware device is important. So this is also controlled by your IO system management. So this driver for specific hardware is important. If the driver changes, then the hardware cannot access the information from that hardware to your internal memory. So this is controlled by your IO system management. So interprocess, next is interprocess communication, next is the memory network management. So these things comes under your network, where your IP address comes into picture, where your IPv4, IPv6 communication protocol comes into picture. We'll be studying this in the later stages. Okay, hope you are understood with all system management unit. So next we will be doing on monolithic structures and microkernels, monolithic versus microkernel in the next class. Okay, fine. Thank you all.